Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our children, our women, our girls have a right to feel safe and be safe in this country. And I'm appalled and shocked by the recent turn of events. The tragic and horrific slaying of 3-year-old Nevelicia Campbell in Brownstown, St. Anne last weekend. And it has only strengthened the resolve of the government, and in particular, the Ministers of Justice, Education, Youth and Information, National Security, and the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport to move swiftly to take all the necessary steps to ensure that we complete the work of the Joint Select Committee in the shortest possible time. Mr. Speaker, when you harm the innocent, the weak, and the vulnerable, you must feel the full brunt of the national law enforcement apparatus. Mr. Speaker, from the vantage point of my ministry, the focus will be on ensuring that the range of offenses and the concomitant penalties included in these laws are in keeping with what our crime statistic, child protection data, as well as epidemiological data are telling us about the kinds of abuse and violence being meted out to our groups, to these groups. We will also be focusing on how we can facilitate and support those who are negatively affected to come forward and report abuse and maltreatment. Statistics from the JCF indicate that of the number of victims of gender-based violence who seek help, only 28% go to the police, 7% to a healthcare provider, and 3% to the church. This needs to change, and change quickly. Mr. Speaker, our words are important, but at the end of the day, only our actions count. Minister Reid and his portfolio agencies, including the Child Development Agency, have also rallied around the community and, in particular, are seeing to the psychosocial care and welfare of the twin brother who Nevelicia left behind. I wish to commend the St. Anne Police, Mr. Speaker, for their swift action in getting to the bottom of this terrible situation. If the allegations are correct, then we can see how a failure in judgment, a failure to exercise responsibility and misplaced values went horribly wrong, ending in the loss of one of our precious gems. Honorable members, we must confront our constituents and have open and honest conversations with them about their responsibilities as adults and as parents. Mr. Speaker, in February 2013, then opposition Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith tabled a motion in the upper house calling for a joint select committee to be convened to consider reforms to several laws. And I read directly from her text. Be it resolved that a joint select committee be convened to consider amendments to the Offences Against the Person Act, the Sexual Offences Act, and the Child Care and Protection Act, with a view specifically to redefining or augmenting, as appropriate, offenses and punishments to be applied to the murder of pregnant women, the murder of children, sexual offenses against children, the abduction of children, and such other violent crimes perpetrated against women, children, and the elderly as may be deemed by the committee to be relevant to such a review. This Joint Select Committee was put on hold in December 2014, and despite many interventions by this side, we were not able to convince the then government that it was important to restart the Joint Select Committee to deal with this matter. Mr. Speaker, At the time, we recognized that the nation was having a crisis and that our women and children were being targeted by criminals. I must commend Senator Johnson Smith for being a voice that was constant in calling for change. Mr. Speaker, with over 1,700 children murdered over the last 14 years, and the continued assault on our pregnant women and other females, my ministry will do its part in the fight against crime that is being waged by this administration. No action in this fight is an individual effort by one minister or ministry. This is a united and focused approach. We're strategically looking at areas of law that need to be reformed. We're not afraid to take on the awesome task of effecting change. Mr. Speaker, the time is now for this Parliament to make its voice heard by prescribing appropriate consequences in the Offences Against the Person Act, the Sexual Offences Act, the Domestic Violence Act, and the Child Care and Protection Act. Those who act with impunity and seek to destroy our future by attacking our most vulnerable citizens should be dealt with accordingly. Mr. Speaker, the statistics continue to tell a sad story about the disregard for the safety of our children by some in the society. Enhancing laws that deal with the issue of violence against the most vulnerable will not be a panacea, but a key aspect of an overall approach towards building a proper framework for their protection. Mr. Speaker, my ministry commits to the people of Jamaica that our efforts will be for the children and women of Jamaica, so that the death of women and children like Nevelicia will not be in vain, but a motivating force that spurs us to continued action. Mr. Speaker, I've had consultations with the Minister of Justice, and he has confirmed to me that the Joint Select Committee in question will resume in the next quarter. Mr. Speaker, our resolve is constant and sure. Our commitment to the women and children of Jamaica is strong, and our efforts will see results. We will not shirk from our responsibility of providing leadership. As we had strenuously advocated in the interests of women and children whilst in opposition, so too will our advocacy continue, but also now be punctuated by forthright action. Mr. Speaker, I call on the entire Parliament to join with the government in partnership to protect our women and children and to protect all our citizens. I thank you very much.
Reports from committees.
Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the opposition would like to thank. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Permission to speak from a seat other than my own, sir. The opposition would like to thank the government for its statement at this time. No doubt, as a member of Parliament for one of the constituencies in St. Anne, the impact of the events over the weekend has bruised me in a way that is unimaginable. And it has bruised me for a number of reasons. My colleague from South Trelawney would even have remembered perhaps 2 years ago when a little girl was beheaded right in Sherwood Content. And I remember attending that funeral. And they could not even open the casket of that little girl. I remember vividly visiting the hospital in St. Anne, where there were 3 little sisters whose father was molesting them, and we had to put them on the ward. And Mr. Speaker, when I came here 2 weeks ago and recounted several incidences of how our nation has been treating our children, there was a bipartisan inclusion in unison of how we felt we should proceed as a country if we were to really do our job as leaders. And so today I am heartened by the calling for partnership, because the way we treat our children is not whether it is green or orange, but whether or not we have a real fervor for enacting the kind of Jamaica that we want to see in the next couple of years. I want to touch on 2 points that the members spoke on. One is a joint select committee. And 2 is to remind the member that in January of this year, there were other pieces of amended legislation that came. I am happy to hear that you will resume the Joint Select Committee. A lot of work was done with those pieces of legislation, but it was also felt with the rape and murder of the 14-year-old in St. Thomas last year. At that time, the Prime Minister had urgently called for new pieces of legislation that would increase the penalties for those perpetrators who particularly abused and molested children. They were tabled in the House in January of this year and looked at how judges could actually use their discretion to make sure that this particular person now, who has done this to this young 3-year-old, could have actually had stiffer penalties. So perhaps, member, maybe you want to bring that back with urgent dispatch, because it would send a signal, particularly at this time, because those pieces are ready. All they need is to be debated right here because they were tabled. So while the Joint Select Committee needs to be resumed, those particular issues are right there. I want to conclude, Mr. Speaker, by saying this. Oftentimes when these things happen, they're shocking. But we need to understand that there's an underbelly in this country that we're afraid to look at. And a lot of times when it rears its ugly head, that is when you hear the society coming out. Children must be our first priority. They're the generations that are coming. And oftentimes we look at our budgets and really not commit the kind of resources that are important to dealing with those things that are important with children. And so I want to also call on the government to make sure it implements the National Plan of Action as it relates to violence and prevention with children. It's all there. And that would actually bring a lot. Member, perhaps you could speak to the Minister in Education, because that plan is there. The other thing I would ask that we do together is to look at another joint select parliamentary committee to look at the impact of toxic stress on children in this country. Because there is seminal information that suggests that if we leave it untreated, it finds its way into adult maladjusted behavior. And I really believe, looking at the research, that a lot of what we're seeing even now, the gap between a parent's understanding of their responsibility versus self-gratification is something as a country we need to look at. It can't be that a mother just gets up and leaves 2, 3-year-olds. There's something there. There's a synapse there in the personality that has gone wrong. And we have to pull it back. Too many incidences of this are happening. And so from our side, whatever it takes that we can do, this is not a tribal partisan approach. We want to fix the problem so that in years to come, those who are looking at this parliament will recognize that this particular parliament was committed to making sure that there was a better Jamaica for all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I thank the member for her comments. It certainly is not a tribal matter. And as the Joint Select Committee convenes, we'll take a holistic look and a holistic approach to how we treat with the matter of violence against women and children. So I look forward to us working as partners to address this matter in a very urgent way.
Reports from committees. Notice of motions given orally. Minister Smith.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next sitting of the House, I'll move the following motion. Whereas subsection 1G1 of section 41 of the Constitution of Jamaica requires a member of this Honorable House of Representatives to vacate his seat if any firm in which he is a partner or any company of which he is a director or manager becomes a party to any contract with the government of Jamaica for or on account of the public service, or if he becomes a partner in a firm or a director or manager of a company which is a party to any such contract. And whereas the Member of Parliament for St. Catherine Southeast is a director of Doculus, a document and copy center that provides services such as photocopying, printing, graphic designing, screen printing, embroidery. The company also supplies stationery and office supplies and may from time to time enter into contract with the government of Jamaica and its agencies. And whereas the members disclosed his interest in the above entity, be it resolved that this motion be referred to the Ethics Committee of the House of Representatives for consideration and report. Mr. Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled The Law Reform Miscellaneous Amendments Restorative Justice Act 2016.
Questions and answers to questions.
Mr. Speaker, at the expiration of 7 days, I will ask the Minister of Industry, Investment, Agriculture and Fisheries the following questions standing in my name.
Mr. Buchanan.
Mr. Speaker, at the expiration of 21 days, I will ask the Minister of Industry, Commerce and Agriculture the following questions in my name.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr.
I was promised the answers to the questions that are overdue standing in my name today. Long overdue standing in my name. Perhaps the House Leader can give me an update. I was promised for today. Perhaps we can get an update.
House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I am also expecting answers to those questions today. And I am expecting the Minister to be in the House, so I would believe, Mr. Speaker, that on his arrival, we could recommit questions and the member would get the answer to those questions.
Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Henry.
Mr. Speaker, I now move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Transport Authority Validation and Indemnity Act of 2016.
A bill shortly entitled the Transport Authority Validation and Indemnity Act 2016 read a first time.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the second reading of the bill.
Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Public business. Before we proceed, Minister, I wish to recognize a number of visitors in the gallery, some from various departments, families, friends, and admirers, to welcome you to Parliament today and ask that you listen keenly to our presentation and observe and say what you see.
Mr. Speaker, I now move for the suspension of standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
The question is for the suspension of the standing orders to enable Leader of the House to take the motion, notice of which he gave earlier. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I now move that the motion, notice of which I gave earlier, be approved.
Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, under public business this afternoon, we continue the debate, the sectoral debate, and our lone presenter this afternoon will be the Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport. And at the conclusion of her presentation, the Minister of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries will close the sectoral debate 2016-2017, Mr. Speaker.
Minister Grange.
Mr. Speaker, I address this honourable House today with a great sense of pride. I'm grateful for the opportunity to participate in this sectoral debate and to outline the plans of the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport.
Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to express sincere appreciation to the many persons from all walks of life who over the years have supported and believed in me. I am most grateful for all they have done and continue to do. I am thankful to friends and family members who have and continue to give me their full support. In particular, my mother, Rafaelita, who earlier this year was critically ill, and she has made a miraculous turnaround. And so I'm happy today about that. And of course, her husband, my father, Gifford Walker. My daughter Paula, her husband Jonathan, and one of my granddaughters who is here, Mitoya, who has just returned from London, where she has completed her studies in communications, special events, and cosmetology. Mr. Speaker, I wish to recognize the hardworking and committed people of Central St. Catherine, the constituency which I've had the honor of facing the electorate 5 times, with an increased majority every time, 3-1. This includes my dedicated counsellor, the veteran campaigner, Teresa Turner. Young Kenesha Allen, whose stature and performance belies her tender age. And councillor caretaker George Moody, who is slated to take the reins very soon for the Ensom division. Special thanks to the Most Honorable Prime Minister Andrew Holness for affording me the opportunity to serve in this capacity, together with my cabinet colleagues alongside whom I have the pleasure of working. Mr. Speaker, I must also say a big thanks to the staff of the ministry and the agencies under my direction, and to the staff of the Parliament who has served us well over the years. I also want to recognize the chairpersons and members of the various boards, commissions, and councils which fall within the purview of this ministry. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to announce that this financial year, the total budget for the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport is $2,628,964,000. Of this amount, $1,394,000 has been allocated to culture. Just over $732,102,000 to sport, and $240,870,000 to gender. While entertainment received $80,947,000. So the budget is rounded out by the $213,050,000 allocated to general administration expenses across the 4 subject areas. Mr. Speaker, the theme of my presentation today is building sustainable prosperity through culture, gender, entertainment, and sport. I refer to it as For the Hard Way. That is to say, four portfolio areas most often undervalued, under-resourced, underinvested, and underdeveloped, but within which is anchored the very soul of the Jamaican psyche and global possibility. 4 portfolios that have been grossly underrated, but have endured and excelled against all odds. Mr. Speaker, today I will outline the policies and programs that will be executed for this year and beyond. Today, I'm determined to present the case of the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport as a central force around which all aspects of growth and development within our country rotate. We are at the center. In this regard, this presentation builds on and takes its cue from the charge given by the Most Honorable Prime Minister in his 2016 budget presentation. And I quote, "This vision of prosperity which I have for Jamaica is a holistic and comprehensive one, a vision in which we have a certain quality of life, a certain quality of relationship in our families, at the workplace, on the streets, in our communities. We must accept in our minds and hearts that prosperity is possible and desirable. Mr. Speaker, esteemed members of this House, my ministry is assured that prosperity is not only possible and desirable, but achievable. Amen. In fact, the portfolio areas of my ministry have demonstrated a constant and consistent aptitude for prosperity. Amen. Over the years, it is within the portfolio areas of culture, entertainment, and sport that some of the very poorest and most vulnerable women and men have been able to achieve and sustain poverty alleviation and wealth creation with gender equity. Historically, persons including our most prolific artist, Bob Marley, have been able to move from circumstances of challenge to livelihoods of substance and value. Mr. Speaker, today Bob Marley's estate compares positively with the budget of the government of Jamaica. That is prosperity. I believe it was former Prime Minister of Guyana, the late Forbes Burnham, who made the observation at the opening of the very first staging of Carifesta in 1972 that culture made the small man a big man. My ministry intends to build on this trend in going forward. We intend to make the small man, the small woman, the youth man and young daughters on the corner big. We intend to, in the words of Booker T. Washington, pull them up by their own bootstraps. Prosperity. Our creativity as a people knows no bounds, but we must think big. Our mindset must be one which is determined to break the chains. Marcus Garvey reminded us that a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. The rear view mirror on our cars is a most useful device, Mr. Speaker. We must be conscious of what's behind us, our glorious past, if we are to move forward with confidence. We must not only think outside the box, we must get out of the box, or better yet, operate as if there is no box, no limitations to what we can achieve as a people. Mr. Speaker, in outlining our priorities, this presentation will reposition these portfolios at the center of the sustainable development agenda of our country. It is my intention to present this case frontally so that it can be understood by all. We cannot get buy-in from our people unless and until they understand the vision. Unless and until we all understand that we are all stakeholders in the enterprise called Operation Jamaica. We are all in this boat together. We float or we sink together. For us, Mr. Speaker, sinking is not an option. We are about building sustainable prosperity with the cultural and creative industries at the center of Operation Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, our people will soon all stand together as our nation celebrates two important milestones that will inspire all of us as we recommit ourselves to doing all that we can for ourselves and our country to confront and overcome the challenges which beset our beloved Jamaica today. Those challenges are persistent poverty, crime, and inequality. Firstly, in a matter of weeks, we commemorate our emancipation and independence. Mr. Speaker, we assure you, my colleagues and the nation, that Emancipation 2016 and Jamaica 54 will be occasions for us to pause, reflect, and celebrate our common history of struggle and redemption. As we confront the challenges of modern Jamaica, we will use these activities to renew our passion and determination to strive towards the achievement of our goals of expanded opportunities, shared sustainable prosperity, and social justice for all Jamaicans. Through these celebrations, we aim to energize the country to coalesce around our collective vision of a unified, peaceful, and equitable Jamaica. And then, Mr. Speaker, we will immediately turn our eyes to the second milestone, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where athletes will once again demonstrate the tenacity, resilience, prowess, and talent for which we are world-renowned. Mr. Speaker, our expectations are high, and I know that you would want me, on behalf of the members of this House and the people of Jamaica, to express our unwavering support and well wishes to our sportsmen and women as they journey to Rio to compete in the Olympics Games. Once again, we will ensure that across the length and breadth of Jamaica, Jamaicans will be able to gather together to witness the sterling performances of our athletes. We will again experience that natural mystic within our culture and psyche that defies explanation, that a country so small could create such giant waves of impact on the world. This is the essence of Brand Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, given my responsibility for gender affairs, I must also add that the gender distribution in Team Jamaica is something about which we are justly proud. Now, this newly constituted Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport has 4 large, cross-cutting, yet distinct portfolios. Culture and the creative industry include arts and culture, cultural and the creative industry, heritage, literary, publications, legal deposit, media arts, and national commemorative events, which include Labor Day, Emancipation, Independence, National Heroes Day, and, of course, reparations. Gender, entertainment, and sport complete the areas covered by this ministry. And within these portfolios are configured 13 supporting agencies, in addition to several commission, councils, boards, etc. I now speak to culture and the creative industries. Institute of Jamaica and its departments, Museum of Jamaica, National Gallery, National History Museum, African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, Jamaica Memory Bank, Jamaica Music Museum, Liberty Hall, the Legacy of Marcus Garvey, Junior Center, and the Simon Bolivar Center. Those fall under the Institute of Jamaica. Then we have the National Library of Jamaica, Jamaica Cultural Development Commission, Jamaica National Commission for UNESCO, Jamaica National Heritage Trust, the Creative Production and Training Center, and the Cinematograph Authority. Under gender, we have the Women's Center of Jamaica Foundation and the Bureau of Gender Affairs. And under sport, Independence Park Limited, Institute of Sports, Jamaica Anti-Doping Commission, the Independent Disciplinary Tribunal, and the Independent Appeals Tribunal, and Sports Development Foundation. The current configuration of the subjects and departments of this ministry brings together all the elements which drive the expansion, development, and maximization of the growth of the cultural and creative industries and the creative economy. It also contains the principal elements of Brand Jamaica, and as such, my ministry serves as a convergence hub, Mr. Speaker, which must play a major role in building and contributing to the promotion of Brand Jamaica as a key element of sustainable economic growth. Brand Jamaica is cross-cutting and multifaceted, but at its core, it incorporates our cultural and creative expressions, entertainment and sports industries, intellectual property, heritage, as well as our cultural infrastructure. Consequently, the culture, entertainment, and sport portfolios have the potential of creating a multiplier effect, as growth in this industry will trigger exponential growth in other contingent sectors, such as tourism, health, services, education, service industry, insurance, media, radio, television, and broadcasting, and production companies. The potential for impactful growth, Mr. Speaker, is far-reaching and expansive. So our objective is to integrate these portfolio areas and forge new partnerships in order to encourage citizens to join us in capitalizing on the country's tangible and intangible cultural, sporting, and heritage legacies. Additionally, we aim to utilize this knowledge and these resources not only to define ourselves, but also to invest in targeted human capital and infrastructural development, as well as sustainable commercial enterprise. Our strategic priorities are human capital development, economic growth and job creation, social inclusion and development. I move quickly to gender affairs, Mr. Speaker. And I'm pleased and honored to be leading a ministry in which human capital is highly valued. It is our people committed and empowered from all strata of society who will be responsible for the transformation of our economy. I wish to use this opportunity to acknowledge and acclaim the presence of 4 women in the cabinet. The Honorable Shaini Robinson, Minister of Labour and Social Security. The Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Jamaica's second female Attorney General, the Honorable Marlene Malahoo Ford. And of course, myself. There has been a notable increase, just in case it has escaped the men, increase in the number of female members in Parliament. In particular, I want to also recognize the powerful new members who have joined us all. The member from St. Andrew Eastern, Minister Fable Williams, the first female to be named a minister in the Ministry of Finance. The member from West Rural St. Andrew, Juliet Cuthbert, she is a minister, she's not a minister of state. The member from West Rural St. Andrew, Juliet Cuthbert, who will truly deliver a prosperity baby. And the member from East Rural St. Andrew, the Most Honorable Juliet Holness, the first Prime Minister's wife to sit in Parliament. And while we welcome the new ladies, I have to commend members from the member from Northeast St. Andrew, Shaini Robinson, who faced 2 by-elections and 4 elections, and the member from Southern Trelawney, who faced the battle 3 times and is proudly sitting in this honorable house stronger than ever. Of course, I must also acknowledge the strength of a woman by particularly recognizing my sister, the leader of the opposition, who leads the other women parliamentarians. She not only leads the other women parliamentarians on that side, but she leads the men sitting on the other side. So I want to say,
a woman time now.
I want to say that the lady on that side, who leads the team on that side, has been through the fire, has paid her dues, and must get her respect. So, I recognize that the representation in Parliament is a little below the 30% target to which we agreed under the Millennium Development Goals. And as stated in our gender policy, but we are determined to get there soon. I want to touch quickly on male marginalization. Apart from beating the men in elections, I am concerned about our men as I am about women. The apparent marginalization of men in our society is a matter to be addressed. It has been noted that approximately 60% of our men are functionally literate, while close to 70% of all violent crimes are committed by men between the ages of 15 to 29. This speaks to the need for action to counter this trend. As Minister with responsibility for gender, I'm committed to play my part. Gender equality requires enjoyment by women and men of all the socially valued goods, opportunities, resources, and rewards afforded by one's citizenship. The prompt name change on my return of the Bureau of Women's Affairs to Bureau of Gender Affairs will facilitate an all-inclusive approach to the promotion of gender equality in its true sense.
Good choice.
Mr. Speaker, the
Where are you marginalizing?
national policy on gender equality will be monitored and evaluated by a soon-to-be-announced multi-sectoral gender advisory council, which will be tasked with the following responsibility. And that council will be comprised of men and women. It will be tasked to develop the framework for the establishment of the policy, to advise the government on the strategic policy direction for the gender portfolio, and to identify a strategy consistent with CARICOM's gender mainstreaming strategy and other relevant international commitments for addressing obstacles to gender equality and the empowerment of women in key sectors of the society. On the principal areas of concern in my ministry is the issue of violence against women and children. And it must remain high on our agenda if we are to ensure that they feel safe. The magnitude of the ongoing violence against women and children in our country is cause for alarm. Mr. Speaker, measures to address domestic violence and gender-based violence continue to receive our uppermost attention. And the ministry, working together with civil society organizations and the business sector, will be mobilizing all sections of the society to join hands to combat this social ill. I want to commend the recent partnership between the United States Embassy in Jamaica and this ministry, which facilitated Jamaica's adaptation of the UN Women's Global Campaign, He for She campaign, which pledged to mobilize millions of men to fight violence against women and girls. This campaign is a UN Women's initiative which intends to reframe gender equality from that of a woman's issue to an issue which requires the full participation of both men and women. This approach is seen as beneficial to all of society, socially, politically, and economically. Now, I want to touch a little on teenage mothers. Our back-to-school and life skills training programs for teenage mothers continue to draw admiration both locally and internationally. Adolescent pregnancy is a social concern, and the agency continues to devise programs and activities to address the needs of adolescent mothers and youth in Jamaica. The Women's Center of Jamaica Foundation commenced the restructuring of the delivery of its program to broaden the scope of its mandate of placing these individuals on equal footing with other adolescents to complete their education and to become gainfully employed. The foundation has a campaign to enroll 1,400 adolescent mothers into the program and reintegrate 600 adolescent mothers back into the formal school system or place them in other institutions of learning. Mr. Speaker, I wish to pause here to express my profound sadness and grief about the brutal slaying recently of one of the Women's Center students, 17-year-old Isika Gale. Isika was in her bed with her 3-month-old baby girl when gunmen entered the family home in Green Pond, St. James, and shot her. Such cruelty, Mr. Speaker, belies understanding. Isika had just recently started a summer job, and she had worked hard to ensure that come September, she would be enrolled in the mainstream school system. And so I am sure the members here would want to extend their condolences to her mother, Tanisha Sawyers, and other members of her family as they come to terms with this horrible loss. I now move to culture, creative industries, and entertainment. Brand Jamaica represents the most globally recognized platform of Jamaica's prosperity. The brand is the basis for most, if not all, of our economic endeavors. It is a central core of our tourism product and is a platform on which tourism arrivals and earnings are assured, allowing Jamaican, even in times of global recession, to maintain a healthy tourism industry. Brand Jamaica is anchored principally in our culture and creative industries, entertainment and sport. And my ministry is determined to build sustainable prosperity for our people by leading the thrust in growing these industries. I have a clear vision of the road we must travel to convert the world-renowned creativity which continues to manifest itself in the Jamaican music industry. Having been a successful player in that industry for many years, I want to highlight some of the points that we must appreciate. Music is one of the world's largest cultural and creative industries, contributing significantly to the global economy, about $15 billion in 2015, with an annual growth rate of 3.2%. In the words of the IFPI, which is the International Federation of the Phonographic Industry, they reported that in 2016, this global industry has seen increases in various areas of commercial activity, such as 10% rise in digital revenues for a total of US $6.7 billion and 45.2% rise in streaming revenue for a total of $2.9 billion. Our Jamaican music is still Jamaica's most powerful export and is still a globally recognized entertainment brand of quality and distinctiveness. It has brought wealth to a host of persons, most of whom, under other circumstances, would have never been able to rise from poverty to prosperity. It employs up to 15,000 persons directly or indirectly in various formats and mechanisms for content creation and development, performance, distribution, royalty payments, etc. Additionally, the worldwide sales of reggae recordings are estimated to value $2 to $4 billion in generated revenue. However, we are not doing enough in Jamaica to realize these numbers because we have not provided the necessary infrastructure to leverage the success of our music overseas. So, Mr. Speaker, in this regard, we have started to bring together the various partners to discuss relevant and appropriate projects to capitalize on the music industry. And so I recently appointed a carefully selected entertainment advisory board. And that board comprises some of the most powerful individuals in the industry in Jamaica. It's chaired by Lenford Salmon. The deputy chair is Gussie Clark, who is the biggest publisher in Jamaica, and also a music publisher, music producer, and a distributor of recording equipment and other equipment into Jamaica. I have ensured that I include someone who loves the music but does not have the experience, so he can learn the business. And that's Dwayne Smith, young Councillor Dwayne Smith, because I feel we must put somebody in that mix who can transition into that kind of rap. And then Kingsley Cooper. Everybody knows Kingsley, Pulse, Fashion. Clifton Specialist Dylan, who is the success behind OMI Worldwide. Dr. Carleen Davis Cowan. Dr. Sonia Stanley Nair. Paula Surtees, who happens to be my daughter, but who is the person who runs the financial aspect of one of the most successful music entity in Jamaica, that is JCAP, the organization that collects royalties and ensure that writers are paid their due. Mr. Bunny Brown, who is a veteran musician and who has never, ever refused when he's called upon to play his part in the industry. There is Howard McIntosh, who everybody knows. Herbie Miller, who is the curator of the Jamaica Music Museum. Clyde McKenzie, who is one of the most experienced and knowledgeable in the area of the creative industry throughout CARICOM. Michael Ibu Cooper, who is doing a fantastic job at the School of Music. And then Joseph Bogdanovich, who dared to invest in a music that he loves and who has taken Jamaica to be his home. And then there's Karen Smith, a voice that everybody knows. And she's determined to bring the entertainment business up to a standard in Western Jamaica. And then there's Jacqueline Knight Campbell from UTEC. Shelley Ann Coran, who used to be with Digicel, who is now very much involved in the music. And Kamal Banki, who everybody knows, runs the successful program of ATI. And so, these individuals who are movers and shakers in the business will reach out right across the island and involve other persons and ensure that we are able to leverage the success. Omar is a consultant. I plan to hold discussions with my colleague, Minister of Tourism, on a standards document to determine what is served to visitors as Jamaican entertainment. There is a concern, and so we have to address it. Our aim is for every visitor who arrives in Jamaica to experience the distinctive sound and images of our Jamaican music. Of course, we intend to engage other entities, including the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, the Edna Manley College, the University of Technology, and other entities. The purpose being that music should not be just treated as extracurricular, but should, alongside in tandem, be taught with accounts, business administration, law, etc., so that we can recognize that music business is serious business. Now, Mr. Speaker, I will move on to how we're going to help to solve this problem. The National Cultural and Creative Industries Commission, which initially started when I was minister and I created what was called the National Cultural and Creative Industries Council. Then it evolved and was developed into the National Cultural and Creative Industries Commission. You know, Mr. Speaker, it's important that we understand we're in a race and it's a relay. And when one starts something and then government changes and we hand the baton, we must recognize it's a relay for Jamaica. And we must recognize the contribution and the part that everybody plays. And so today I recognize the fact that the commission, it has now evolved into something substantial. And we are going to take it and we're going to move it and make it even to that much more a substantial body. Now, I have tabled several ministry papers because I know that time is limited. And by tabling the ministry papers, everyone here will have a chance to look at areas of development in the ministry. I also have copies of my presentation, which will be handed out, and I want to ask that it be treated as being presented in Parliament, because we are limited with time. I want to move quickly to some really important projects. The Jamaica's Blue and John Crow Mountain, Mr. Speaker, recently inscribed as a World Heritage Site, making it the first mixed World Heritage Site in the Caribbean. We have, in fact, set up a series of workshops. And the first workshop was held in May and saw entities such as the Jamaica Business Development Corporation, HART, TPDCO, JSIF, and other entities. And why that was done is because we saw the possibilities as being endless that could make the people of the Blue and John Crow Mountain benefit from this inscription. And therefore, the workshops were set up. Again, it was a relay. The work was done. It went to the Heritage Committee. They wanted to redefine the boundaries. And in redefining the boundaries, it was handed over to the administration that came in. So it is a relay. It is not here about you taking credit and me taking credit. You know what? Mr. Speaker, I had an interesting experience. When the track was being put in place, when they were opening the track at GC Foster, and I spoke to the work that I had done, the preliminary work, and I said, I have an excellent relation with the minister who has taken over. And this is like a relay. We pass the baton, and there is no divide. And when the minister came up, she said, well, I can let Ms. Grange know that she will never hold the baton again. Well, today, I have the baton. I am gracious enough, Mr. Speaker, to say that I will continue to express that there is no divide in politics and culture. Now, I have to speak briefly on the work that we are doing with the Rastafari community. And of course, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the 1966 official visit to Jamaica of His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie. And I use this as a point of departure to speak about Pinnacle. Of the 8 sites that will be declared by the JNHD, the government is committed to the declaration and development of 6 lots on the Pinnacle lands in Sligoville, St. Catherine, as a heritage site for the Rastafarian community. To date, Cabinet has approved the purchase of 5 lots, and negotiations will take place to execute the sale of these 5 lots at an agreed price. In the meantime, the JNHD team has conducted exploratory work on the 6th lot, and the board of the JNHT will be providing me with a report on the outcome of this work. I want to remind you that the part of this property that has already been declared a national monument falls under the direct purview of the JNHT, which means that it will be protected and preserved in accordance with the JNHT Act. The other matter, which is a vexed issue, is a long delay in completing Marcus Garvey's boyhood home. So the Garvey boyhood home, the property is located at 32 Marcus Garvey Way in St. Anne, and the site was declared a national monument in 1992. And at that time, two main challenges became apparent: the issue of the ownership of the property and the state of disrepair of the premises, which was unbefitting the hero. Cabinet approved the compulsory acquisition of the site in 2010. Upon the request of the then Prime Minister, the Honorable Bruce Golding, and myself as the Minister with responsibility for culture, the JNHT prepared a proposal for the creation of a memorial park. Prime Minister Golding committed then to relocating the occupants and acquisition of the lands by the government. August 2011, the Chase Fund made a commitment to support the project and to fund the restoration of the home as part of the Jamaica 50 Legacy Program. Due to the non-use of the funds, in 2013, Chase indicated that the funds were no longer available, but committed to assisting with aspects of the restoration project in the future, subject to the resubmission of a detailed plan and estimates for the restoration. I have now instructed the JNHT to review the plans, to make a new submission, and to ensure that it is completed in time to be officially open next year to celebrate Garvey's birthday in August as a Jamaica 55 legacy project. Mr. Speaker, this leads me to an issue that I know is dear to the heart of my colleague, Minister of Transport and Mining, reparations, which seeks redress for one of the greatest atrocities in history visited upon black people. This issue will be given the kind of priority it deserves as we re-establish the National Committee on Reparations. Today, I am pleased to announce that an impressive group of Jamaicans have agreed to serve on the committee, which we intend to rename the committee the National Council on Reparations. Not a committee, but a National Council on Reparations to reflect the importance we place on this body. Cabinet has approved the following persons to serve: Professor Vereen Shepherd as co-chair, Mrs. Lalita Davis-Mattis as co-chair. So Lalita Davis-Mattis, who now chairs the Jamaica National Heritage Trust, and Professor Vereen Shepherd will co-chair this committee or this council. Two strong, powerful women who are passionate about their heritage and their history. And then the other members are QC Frank Phipps, Lord Anthony Gifford, Dr. Jelani Nair, Professor Rupert Lewis, Mr. Stephen Golding, Professor Michael Barnett, Muta Baruka, Alan Hope, Kabu, Mrs. Andrea Williams, Mr. Danny Roberts, CD, and Senator Cavan Gale. So we have the kind of mix that will make the statement that we are serious about reparations, and we have put the talent and skills that are necessary. Mr. Speaker, there's a new direction for the Cultural and Production Training Center. They have
the Minister's time for speaking has expired. House Leader, you may oblige.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Minister's time be extended by 5 minutes to allow her to complete her presentation.
The motion is that the Speaker's time be expended, the member's time be extended by 5 minutes. Those in favour? Aye. Those against?
Mr. Speaker, it would have been nice if I got a little more because I've got so many subjects. But in rebranding the CPTC, the CTV station is now called JamVision, and it will focus on improved content that covers the wide gamut of culture. So you now have JamVision, which is the cultural television of Jamaica. And they have gone ahead and signed agreements with UWI Reggae Studies, the JCDC, Calabash Literary Festival, Heineken Star Time, RGR Group, in fact, which means that they are not just limited to their channel, but they will go free to air as well.
Very good.
So, and of course, they'll be on various platforms, including streaming. I'm going to quickly go to sport. Our sportmen and women continue to defy the odds and perform above the expectation of a country of our size. On every occasion, particularly in the area of athletics, our sportsmen and women take on countries of the stature of the United States, the United Kingdom, and all of Europe with tremendous panache and success. Mr. Speaker, in order to better appreciate the gold mine that we sit on in the area of sport, allow me to summarize the Jamaican context. Jamaica's international competitive advantage in the area of sport is well known. The Honorable Usain Bolt, CD, OJ, continues to be the most celebrated legendary sportsman in the world today, with his estate valuing millions of US dollars. That is moving from poverty to prosperity. Others like Shelley and Fraser Price, Veronica Campbell-Brown, Asafa Powell carry strong global name recognition at the highest level of sports. And I call sports physical culture because it's all a part of the cultural and creative industries. Sport has a positive impact on popular culture in terms of behavior, and is considered an important means of reducing conflicts and disputes among local groups and communities in Jamaica. All of us, as members of Parliament, understand this aspect very well, as indeed in every constituency there are sports programs being implemented. Now, so, Mr. Speaker, I have commissioned, Mr. Speaker, I think at this point it is necessary, and I have commissioned, Mr. Speaker, you see they're taking up my time. I have commissioned a comprehensive review of all sporting entities which fall within the ministry with a view to restructuring. The objectives are to facilitate expected economic gains, to eliminate duplication and inefficiencies, to improve institutional sports capacity, to maximize Jamaica's full potential in the sports industry, to provide for integration for effectiveness, to develop a national centralized sports database, and to rationalize funding streams. And so, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say to you, there will be big changes, but changes to improve Government of Jamaica sports program. We're going to put a lot of emphasis, Mr. Speaker, on community sports development programs. And so we will be tabling in this Parliament a program that will benefit every single member of parliament here, assist them in their community sports program. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I want to indicate that we have not leveraged the success that we have had internationally in sports. And so the intention is to create in Jamaica a training facility that can appeal to international bodies. The government is committed to move sport front and center of economic growth. And one of our earliest priorities, Mr. Speaker, will be capacity building and infrastructure development. The government will not stand on the sidelines. The Ministry of Sport has already started to revisit our sport infrastructure and the technical capabilities existing in this great sporting nation. So we are looking at 4 major facilities across the island. We are committed to developing the National Stadium as a first-class facility in Kingston. And if you look at the PowerPoint, you will see the images of the artist's illustration of what we intend to do. We will give support for the development of the Herb McKinley Stadium. And we will look at 2 other major facilities across the island so that we can boast that we have facilities of the highest standard. So, Mr. Speaker, what's left for me to say is that I extend an invitation to all members of this honorable house to the series of celebratory events to be staged in commemoration of the 54th anniversary of our independence and the 178th anniversary of full freedom. It will again be a period of reflection, thanksgiving, and celebration. And you know, the main activity kicks off with Emancipation Day celebration, July 31st, at the Seville Heritage Park. And then throughout that week, we have celebrations which culminate with the Grand Gala. And the Grand Gala, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, will be grand. And just to wind up, I want to say to you that I did try to bring a report to you here in moving into Jamaica 55, a report on Jamaica 50. But I was not able to find all the details I required. But what I can tell you, I found a room full of Jamaica 50 pins, over 25,000, and I hear more is coming. And so I'm going to use the opportunity to offer everybody in this house a Jamaica 50 pin. Everybody in the gallery, a Jamaica 50 pin. And we will take the Jamaica 50 pin to the Grand Gala, and we will distribute those. Over 25,000 pins and more on the way. And so, Mr. Speaker, I have 2 presentations to make.
Vice President election.
Yes. One to the Leader of the Opposition. This was a publication that we worked very hard to produce for Jamaica 50. It was finally completed after we left government. But they've been sitting in a closet. They've been sitting in a closet. And so I am going to make available this publication. This one is for the Leader of the Opposition. Right? This one. And it is a fabulous coffee table book with all our heritage sites. A wonderful gift. Please. Here's the other one.
for each of us?
Yes. And then I plan to, there is another publication, which is a cultural atlas, which was funded by the IDB. Again, I found it with cobwebs all over it. Where is it? I also have a copy for the leader of the opposition. It's a publication that is extremely useful, and it tells you everywhere across Jamaica what is there as part of our heritage and our culture. And so I want to thank you all for listening to me. You will see my ministry papers, which will give you more details on all our projects. And I look forward to wining and dining and entertaining you with my team at the Jamaica Pegasus in a little while. Thank you.